Hey everybody, it's Seth. A quick note before we start today's episode. We recorded all of this week's conversations before there was a lockdown because of the worldwide pandemic. So we still wanted to release them because we think Ping Ho is a fascinating woman and a fantastic restaurateur, and that you would benefit from hearing our conversations with her. But of course, that means we are going to talk about a lot of events that aren't actually happening anymore in this conversation, and there's really nothing we can do about that. Sorry about that. We promise that next week, instead of the social awkwardness and tension that has been created by recording our episodes in advance, we will just have the sheer outright panic that you would expect. Until then, enjoy the show.
Check. 1, 2, 3.
The D. Brief. This is the D brief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's
arts and entertainment scene.
This is the D
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the podcast for and about Detroit artists and entertainers. I am Seth Ressler.
I'm Becky Scarcello.
And coming back to the show one more time, we have the woman behind the Royce, behind Marrow. She's also a partner in Mink. She's all the places that you want to eat around Metro Detroit.
All the one name
yes,
places.
She is involved with. Ping Ho, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Now, you had a really interesting career before you ever got anywhere near a restaurant, including an awful long stint over at Warner Music Group, where you were involved in some big digital music deals. Mm-hmm. So what we want to talk to you about today is all that kind of stuff that maybe local artists, should know.
An inside scoop.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But I do want to know, if I'm coming to your place, do you have a favorite dessert on the menu?
I actually don't love sweets, so
really?
I don't eat a lot of dessert.
No?
Yeah, but ice cream. I make an exception for ice cream. So
how about, is there a dish you miss from Singapore?
So many to count.
Yeah.
Well, but I would say off the top of my head, this spring roll called popiah. It's wrapped in a soft flour-based skin, and it's not fried. It's like a fresh roll. It's got, some vegetables. It's got some pork. It's got some shrimp in it, and it's so fresh and delightful.
Oh my gosh.
Are there ingredients?
And a little bit of a sweet sauce too inside. And chili.
Are there ingredients that are hard to get here that you can get in Singapore?
The turnip, the special turnip that we use as the main filling, that's pretty hard to get here.
Okay, because I was going to say you need to make that.
All right. I know what we're getting her for Christmas.
Yeah.
All right, Becky, let's start off the show with some trivia.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you one last trivia question about the Nain Rouge. This is the red dwarf, the legendary creature of Detroit, who comes and foretells misfortunes. So the Marche de Nain Rouge is coming up this Sunday, March 22nd. It's a big costume parade. It's sort of our take a little bit on Mardi Gras. So how it started was in 2010, two Wayne State University Law School students, Francis Grunow and Joe Uhl. I think we had Francis on the show before.
Yeah, we've interviewed him before.
So they were talking about the similarities between Detroit and New Orleans and how much, the cities have in common. And wouldn't it be nice if Detroit had some version of Mardi Gras, just in terms of the fun and the costumes and the parade aspect, but also the sense of bringing the community together. So they made it happen. And groups create floats. There's bands, other people that perform music, people march in costumes. It's really about the people are the parade. So it's tons of fun. And so what I wanted to ask you is, what is the purpose, in our case, for banishing the Nain Rouge? What's the purpose of wearing costumes?
Why do you wear a costume to banish the Nain Rouge?
So, or be a part of this parade.
Right.
So is it to show...
Because going naked is frowned upon?
In any social situation, actually. Yeah. Except maybe the dirty show.
Maybe that's why I'm not very popular.
The dirty show, you could do that. So A, to show what part of Metro Detroit you're from. So is it sort of a system of neighborhood identification? Or to celebrate the Lenten season, aka Mardi Gras or Carnival, to disguise yourself so the Nain Rouge cannot recognize you. Which of those three?
All right, run through this one more time. Why do you wear a costume
at the Marche de Nain Rouge?
At the Marche de Nain Rouge.
The parade coming up on Sunday. To show what part of Metro Detroit you're from, to celebrate the Lenten season, a la Mardi Gras, or to disguise yourself so the Nain Rouge cannot recognize you.
So if you were to wear a costume, wait, what part of Detroit are you from?
Southwest. That's where I live. Yeah.
Mexican town. All right. Yes. So there's clothing that could portray that. I'm from Oak Park. There really isn't.
Yeah.
You know.
You just wear what you're wearing.
I just wear what I'm wearing. Yes.
It's not really a costume.
So I don't think it's that one.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think it's B.
B?
Harkens to the Mardi Gras
Tradition.
theme.
Yeah.
That's
Or mask.
and what was C?
To disguise yourself so the Nain Rouge cannot recognize you.
I think that's it. I think you don't want the Nain Rouge to recognize you.
You're right, Seth.
Oh.
So because you have to also switch your costume up every year because
otherwise he'll remember.
He'll remember. So you have to not be the same thing, so he can't come back and find you.
Dude's got a good memory.
Yeah. Okay, Pink, so you were a VP of Digital Business Development at Warner Music before you even thought about doing this whole restaurant business. So first of all, what is that? And what advice would you give? So we have a lot of artists, musicians listening to the podcast. What advice would you give them in this day and age, up and coming, how to navigate?
Right. So my job was, I was part of a team. We negotiated deals for the entire Warner catalog, which, being the third largest music company, I think till this day it's still right. But back then, we're number 3 behind Universal and Sony, and so I was part of the team. We came up with the business structure for how do you monetize content on digital platforms. So when I joined, Warner was still making majority of its business from CDs, selling CDs. By the time I left, that business was dead and digital was the bulk of it.
Over the 10 years.
A CD is a flat disc.
It's shiny and round. Yeah.
And I was quite fortunate really to be part of a very smart team that came up with business models such as how if you play a video on YouTube, user-generated video, and it has Madonna, synced to it. If a user chooses to use Madonna as a soundtrack, how does Warner get paid for that use of that music?
And was the interest in getting paid, it was not just filing a copyright claim and getting it taken down?
Correct. So it started as copyright claim infringement, take it down. But then I think the music business started realizing, look, we have to work with technology and innovation. You can't do Napster all over again, trying to take down Napster, sue Napster, right? So as opposed to working against the tide of innovation, working with the tide and seeing how the industry could benefit.
So you're the reason that every time we upload an episode of this podcast with a song at the end, we get an email the next day saying, a copyright, don't worry about it. We're just going to pay somebody else.
Well, there are ways to legitimize the use of, copyrighted music, yeah.
So what were the big concerns when you were negotiating those deals? What were the big sort of hurdles or sticking points or things that you were trying to address?
I think trying to in a team of in a room full of lawyers and business people in an old industry like the music business back then, trying to bridge understanding with a young bunch of technologists who are just thinking about innovation, who are just thinking about delivering a great experience, who don't understand anything about intellectual property. I think that was kind of, especially in the early days, bridging that was challenging.
So there was a generation gap.
Oh yeah, I mean, value gap, right? Like the music business is just trying to make money for its artists, technologists, and platforms like Apple, Spotify were just trying to create something cool.
Right.
And this must be in the early days too, when Silicon Valley was still very optimistic and everything's going to be free. And before we realized that Facebook was going to destroy Western democracy, this was, but I mean, there was that attitude, right? I mean, coming from
it's all gonna shake
the
out.
Technologists, like, this is going to be great. It's the great, leveling of the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Wow.
So where do the musicians fit in to it, and how do they get paid these days?
So it's all done. I mean, we've all gone to streaming, right? And so there are business models behind streaming and different types of streaming. So you have from your on-demand Spotify, someone who pays $9.99, who can stream any song within the catalog that Spotify has on demand, and even caching it on that device, to interactive streaming like Pandora, right? And you hear ads. So there's a business model behind every different type of streaming service, and artists get paid out in different ways, via the music company, and independent artists get paid out via, certain sites that aggregate and help manage content, right? Just rights management. So yeah, it's a lot of it is down, calculations of seconds of streams, pennies, fractions of pennies that actually end up adding up, right? But it's still, the business model really only works if there are millions and millions of streams that happen, right? And so the traffic will then generate, a meaningful enough check at the end of the day for an artist.
Right. And do you have any, I know you've been out of it for a bit, but any advice for how artists get noticed on there so that people even find them to be streaming their music?
I mean, I think a lot of it is still live performances actually do drive, knowing, because it's a crowded marketplace. When if you put your song on Spotify via an aggregator, how do you know it can be found? So a lot of direct fan, D2F, right, what we call direct to fan outreach. So through social media, through live performances. So it has to be a lot of lean forward by the artists themselves, their own YouTube page, their own Instagram page, TikTok, right? I mean, there's so many new, social platforms that I don't even keep track of. But TikTok is a big music platform these days.
Let me ask, because like you, I've worked in sort of the music world adjacent to it. I've been a radio broadcaster, but have not been involved in the aspect of radio where I've been dealing with record labels since really the time of CDs. And now, like you said, it's all digital. Back when I was dealing with record labels, the role that they played, it was really two. One, it was to promote artists or bands, to basically raise awareness, either by getting them radio airplay or things like that, but also a role of distribution, getting their music to a place where the consumer could buy them. In the digital age, how has that changed? Has their role changed?
I think the main roles of the music business remain the same. Still a lot of marketing and distribution, and there's muscle, right? There's muscle behind what the labels can offer. But not every artist, in my opinion, not every artist is suited to be signed to a label, because you have to fit what they want, or else at some point they're just going to drop you, right? And so you might get hurt in the long run or the medium run, but if you fit and you can actually, and sometimes it's a happy partnership, right? That you just evolve into something that they help make big, right? But at the end of the day, it's still marketing, distribution. The deals that labels cut with these companies are always invariably better than if you went through a small aggregator trying to get you a content deal. The distribution, social, from all the social platforms. I mean, the labels are now completely immersed on top of it, and expert at dealing with social as well. So really, the marketing still remains the same, and the engine's still there, but it's just more diverse. And the labels are doing it pretty well, but for a small subset of artists.
Right.
Not every artist fits the label model, the big label model.
So what advice would you give to young artists who are out there who are maybe they think they want to be on a label? What would you tell them?
I would say, perform as much as you can, right? Get the music out there. A&R executives still go out and listen to bands as much as they can. They're, tapping into what's hot, what's coming up, what's trending. Really and these days it's not just getting a stage and performing. You have so many other platforms, and many of them are digital. So getting your music, your creations out there on various platforms.
Yeah, and even things like, hey, you're playing to a small room of 20 people that you didn't get paid for, but if you have a really good videographer making it, and then you put it all over social media, it could look like you had a huge room.
Correct. Yeah. Or collaborating with some, very creative friends to create some funny TikTok video using your music. And then if that video takes off, everyone's going, where's that song?
Yeah.
Right.
Here's my advice if you're a local musician. Go to the Royce, and in between your questions about wine, just sort of pepper in.
Yeah, say, it's pink here.
So, right.
I'll be happy to chat music business with anyone, seriously.
Do you ever have music live performances at the Royce?
No, we don't do a lot of live performances, but spoken word is something we did twice, and it was very successful.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Nice.
A lot of licensing happens when you're, we're not a live music venue. So
right, of course.
Oh, so it's all coming back to bite you in the, I see. There's an artist opportunity that I want to let you know about. Arts, Beats, and Eats is coming back and is accepting music submissions. If you've ever wanted to play at Arts, Beats, and Eats, the deadline is April 1st to apply. Just go to artsbeatseats.com. That's hard to say three times fast.
It is. Slow it
Ping,
down.
before you get out of here, we got to play a little game. Are you ready?
Okay.
Here's how this works. We're going to ask you for a series of rapid-fire recommendations. Just tell us the first thing that comes to mind. Starting with this, now that you're a Detroiter, where is the first place you take out-of-town visitors?
Belle Isle.
Ooh,
It's a good one.
that's a good choice. You have a
I
favorite
love, it's
spot
just
on Belle Isle?
beautiful. It's, I go paddleboarding in the summer. It's just gorgeous.
Nice.
When you have, speaking on that topic, talk to your friends in New York, even Singapore, wherever, what do you find is the biggest misconception about Detroit that you learned was not true when you moved here?
That it is, in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest. Like, I actually think of Detroit as more the Great Lakes, right? So when people think about the Midwest, it's like surrounded by land and flat land. But I think, we're very much, in an open area. Like, to me, that's the water's right there. It feels really open.
Yeah.
All right, you worked in the music industry. Now that you're here in Detroit, what is your favorite place to see a concert here?
I would say the Masonic Temple.
That's a good one.
That's a good choice. Yes.
What's a wish you would have for the future of Detroit? You've seen a lot of changes even the short time you've been here. What's a wish for the future?
I wish Detroit great success in terms of, and also more people moving in, but also local Detroiters feeling that they're part of the fabric and they're an important part of the future. So integration within communities. I would like to see, more of the suburbs coming in and really, greater Metro Detroit being more integrated.
All right, here's something to ask a former New Yorker. What do you think the Detroit arts and entertainment scene is still missing? What do we need here that we don't have?
I do think we need more performing venues.
Yes.
It would be really cool to be able to, just have more venues. Like I live very near L Club.
Love it.
But imagine we're downtown, right, somewhere as well, and then also somewhere in Midtown. But I think
Definitely.
more performing venues.
So that'll be your next business venture. We'll talk later. If you could bring any Detroiter that hasn't been into Marrow for a special lunch, living or dead, who would you want to serve?
That's a tough one. Barry Gordy.
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
What would you talk to him about?
I feel like you'd have a lot to talk about.
He's a record label exec. What would you talk to Barry Gordy about?
Oh my, where do we begin, right?
Yeah.
From how, the history of Motown, the performers who have gone through his spot and whom he signed. But I've been to the Motown Museum about 3 times.
Yeah.
And the story is great, like how he, built his small little label to become the Motown.
I'd love to just sit and be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
Very nice.
Hing Ho. She is the owner of the Royce and Marrow and also a partner in Mink. She's been with us all week. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic.
Yes,
Such a pleasure.
Let's mention one more time the World of Wine. What's it all about and when does it happen next?
So in my next upcoming event at Marrow is a wine dinner. World of Wine theme is Spain. So Liz Martinez, who's a sommelier and also a good friend of mine, we collaborate with her every month. We pick out a country. So with Spain, she selected 5 wines and we're going to actually maybe 4. And, Chef Sarah has built a menu around it. So it's also a test to Sarah's creativity, because she doesn't usually cook Spanish food, right? Or any other country. Yeah. It's, her take on New American. So, it's always a fun night of learning about the wines, tasting them, and then enjoying the food pairings.
Is it always that schedule each month, the last week of the month?
No,
it varies.
It varies a little bit, yeah.
And just follow you on social media to
do follow us
see
on
those.
Facebook, and we also post on Instagram a lot. So,
Nice. Well, thank you for being here all week. This has been absolutely fantastic.
I'm hungry.
Becky, let's close out with a song. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so this is another instrumental. I've been getting more submissions of those lately. This is called Walk Around by Aaron Jonah Lewis.
I love this. I saw this come in. I'm excited about this one.
Did you listen to it?
Yes.
It's so cool. So I think we first heard about Aaron from Ann DeLisi, and she was pretty excited about him. It's very unique. So this is from the album Mozart of the Banjo, the Joe Morley Project. So Aaron is a virtuoso banjo player and fiddler. Joe Morley was a British banjo player from 100 years ago. So that's what's going on here. And there's a show March 28th at the Magic Stick. It's for WDET. It's called the Do-Si-Do with Detroit Square Dance Society that Aaron Jonah Lewis will be playing. So here is his tune, Walk Around.
I would totally go see this show. That's it for us this week. Until next week, Detroit's moving.
Keep up.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.